Welcome to Sailing Sersha. I'm Tegan. My parents sold our house, sold their business, and bought a 38-foot island spirit catamaran with the goal to travel the world. Only problem is, it needed a complete refit. After 3 years, we are finally ready to set sail. This is Colbin, my husband, Karen, my mum, Denver, my brother, and Robin, my dad. Together we make up Sailing Sersha. After spending a week in St Helena enjoying their incredible sea life, we were now making moves to start heading over to Fernando de Noronha. The night before we left, we were able to meet up with some of our South African friends, Regan on Axiom and Dave from Rev de Loon, and Andrew and his family from Calypso. It was so nice to be able to see a friendly face after such a long passage and hear that South African accent. We left St Helena with quite heavy hearts because it really was a beautiful island with beautiful people. But we were also excited to be getting closer and closer to our end destination, Brazil. When we left, we had beautiful nights where the moon was so bright it felt like the day was breaking. You could see the waves and the clouds in the sky. Yet another dilemma with the steering. Colvin picked up that it seemed a bit stiff. And they're just looking at how everything's running in there and lubricating it. Waves are quite high. Too bad. Still relatively comfortable sailing. Birthday boy day, Robin's birthday. This is how you cook when you're in the heat of the equator. Tegan's doing pancakes, crepes, and it's just so dash darn hot in here with the stove on. A beautiful day, but terrible, very low wind all night. Colbin at helm, praying for bigger wind. What's our average now?
12 knots of wind, doing 3.5 knots.
So it's a beautiful day, but not conducive to moving at any speed. Bernard became a big part of our family. This was day 3 of his Atlantic voyage with us. He goes off about twice a day to go and feed or do what he needs to do, and then he comes back. But we always get such fright that he's left us for good. But he always seems to come back.
about across to Brazil. We should be anchoring at Fernando tomorrow, and we haven't had a day like this other than those storms when we first left. Since then, we haven't had a day like this yet. The universe is throwing it all at us today.
Even through all the bumpy weather, squalls and rain, Bernard stayed with us.
He's been with us now for about 5 days. I don't know that he's ever going to leave.
As we had said in previous videos, we never wanted to approach anchorages at night, and especially not Fernando de Noronha, because we had been warned by other sailors that it was an extremely tricky anchorage to get into and safely anchor at in the dark. So we slowed down the night before to try and get to the anchorage at first light, but a squall came past and pushed us a little bit past Fernando, meaning that we had to go back on our track and against the current, which wasn't great, but we did get to Fernando safely. After a lot of hand staring into oncoming big swell, everyone was extremely exhausted after quite a few hours being at the helm and beating into the waves, but it was good to see the land of Fernando.
We're about to end our current track on the chart plotter. Its total length is 3,238 nautical miles.
So we just pulled the duck up on shore and we're heading to port control. This is the little beach up by the harbour master area. That boat over there was pulled up off of the breakwater the other night. The storms that come through are crazy. He seems to have broken his mooring and ended up on that breakwater over there. Had to be pulled off in the morning. Little beach area, really beautiful. Wish we had better weather, but so be it.
Unfortunately, we only spent one night at Fernando de Noronha. We would have loved to explore more, but we had been told that there was quite a few squalls that were coming through in the evenings, and a lot of people were sitting up on watch most evenings just to make sure no anchors were dragging. And we just thought, let's just get to our destination where we can relax and settle down. So the next day we were off and on our way to Cabedelo, Brazil. Before leaving Fernando de Noronha, we had extensively checked predict wind, only to find that the track that looked perfect wind-wise and swell-wise was completely wrong and pretty much opposite of what was predicted. We had been predicted following seas and light breeze, and we were given squall after squall and swell on the beam. So we were really not impressed. We went through some of the most horrific squalls we've ever been through, where it just took us around in circles. As much as we pushed the motors to get out, as we'd get to the edge of the squall, it would just take us around again. After a very long journey, we're slowly coming up to Cabedelo. Didn't expect it to be so big. As we turned into the river mouth, we just missed two squalls coming from either side of the boat.
So we are here at Cabedelo, very settled at Jacari Marina Village. The trip from Fernando was a bit of a nightmare. Trip to Fernando was great. From St Helena to the night before Fernando was wonderful. That last day was awful. When we left, we got to Fernando, we checked in very easily. The officials there are very friendly. It was all done and dusted in about half an hour, 45 minutes. We only stayed overnight. All we wanted to do was get to Cabedelo. We just wanted to get to a place where we could just settle and really put our feet up. So we left Fernando, I think it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. The weather was good, the weather window looked great. A couple of hours in on the trip, we had been outside of Fernando 3 or 4 hours, and our one engine started alarming and cut out. We all went into a bit of a panic mode, went down, had a look at it. After a lot of investigation, we discovered that one of the fins of the impeller on the raw water feed had broken off. So we thought, okay, well, this is doable. We can just change that impeller and be on our way. We were managing on sail. We were on sail and a little bit of engine at the time, so we carried on with the one engine. Colvin opened up the impeller, the water pump, changed the impeller. But whilst we were doing that, we noticed that even with the engine in reverse, we could hear the propeller turning, which didn't make sense. when you sail, if you don't want your propeller turning just from the sheer water passing over it, you put the engine into reverse, the controls into reverse, and it stops it. But we could hear it turning from inside the boat, so we went outside, put the GoPro down on a stick, and could see it was turning. We also looked through the escape hatches. If the water goes over the escape hatches whilst we're sailing, you get a beautiful magnified view across to the other side of the boat, and that propeller was moving, which didn't make sense to us. But we knew from past experience that when that happens, very often the bushes, I think it's the bushes inside, the bush inside the propeller has stripped. So it's holding onto the sail drive, but the propeller is just turning. So we figured, so then what we thought was going to be a simple fix, that engine was still out of action because we had no propulsion on that engine. So we wrote that engine off for the rest of the trip. Something else that had happened was when we were coming into Fernando from on our trip from St Helena, is we noticed the one morning we woke up and there was just no solar going into the system, and it turned out that one of our MPPT controllers had gone as well. For those who don't know, it's the controller that regulates the sun power coming from your solar feeding your batteries. So by one of those going, we've got 2 sets of solar panels on 2 separate controllers. So now we were down to 1 set of solar panels being operated on by the one working charge controller. So that in itself was a worry, because we were only able to put in half the power that we would ordinarily be putting into the boat. After we figured that we had totally lost that engine, we thought, we can do this, we've been through worse, we got this. And we carried on with the trip, obviously. There had been one stage where we thought, do we go back to Fernando? And we thought, no, the weather's getting worse, let's just head. It shouldn't be a long trip to Cabedelo. It should take about a day and a half, I think, under good conditions. So we thought, no, we're just going to carry on. And it wasn't much longer, and the squalls started hitting. They were just coming from every direction, and from mini squalls to like really crazy squalls. But anybody who knows squalls knows that they last for a relatively short time, so you just take one at a time, bite-sized pieces, and you just work your way through them, thinking that they would just die out. But it turned out that we had squalls the entire way back to Cabedelo. We've since spoken to a lot of boats that have come in here or had come in before us, and they all say exactly the same thing. So I don't know whether it's the time of year or that's just what happens between Fernando and Cabedelo, but everybody battled squall after squall. Some very bad, some not so bad. On the second night, which we shouldn't even have been at sea yet, but because of the squalls pushing us all over the place, the trip was taking us a lot longer, and we only had the one engine. So when we were hitting squalls and we should have just been able to power up and get out of them, we were fighting it with one engine. So on the second night, with only having one engine working, Tegan and Colbin's bed was open because that was the working engine. So we kept that open so that we could constantly just pop down there and monitor it the whole time. And on one of Colbin's trips down there in the middle of the night, he saw air bubbles going into the water fuel separator. Now, anybody who knows fuel systems knows you cannot have any air in a fuel system. And he came rushing up, and as he was about to say to us, there's air getting into the fuel system, that engine died as well. So now we're 2 engines down and we're in the middle of a squall. So we did panic somewhat, but the upside to that was that Colbin had seen the air going into that system just before it happened. So we knew exactly where to start. Had he not seen that, we wouldn't have known where to start looking. So we went straight there. He and Tegan worked on the fuel separator. We tightened up. What had happened is you've got a little screw in the bottom of the cup at the bottom of the fuel separator that you would open to let the water out when your fuel separated. And with all the smashing and crashing, that screw had just worked its way a little bit loose. So he tightened it up. We had to bleed the system. So it didn't take too long, but we were up and running again. So yes, we can do this. Back to being positive again. And off we went. But then the squalls really started getting crazy. And that's the storm cells. That's all around in front of us. So hard to hold steady. The red line, the red circle around the boat is our 2 nautical mile zone. That shows us that the storm cell's just moving into that now. It's also moving across very quickly. So hopefully the bulk of that storm is going to have crossed our path before we actually get there. hoping and praying. Third day on the water, the squalls were just crazy, and we got into one. We were getting closer to, so we were, I think, within like 15 nautical miles of the coast of Brazil, and we got into one particular squall system that went on for, it must have been 2 hours, if not more. And we had put the radar on, and the radar goes over your charts, and we could just see that we were just surrounded by this massive pink area. And we were using the one engine that we had to try and get out of it, but every time we got to the side, Robin was at helm and I was just watching the waves and just giving it directions on when waves were coming, and it was a bit of a nightmare. But every time we thought, oh, we could see ourselves on the chart, we're getting to the edge of the squall, we're going to get out of it now, the wind would just take us and throw us back into it. Now, I know we messaged Chris, and one of the things he said to us was, and we're probably going to get flack on our comments because we did on the last video as well, you control your boat, do not let the weather control your boat. It was just really hard. This will get emotional. Anyway, this trip wasn't as bad as the first week of our trip where we thought we were going to die. We were in control, but it was just really horrible. So, like I say, every time we got to the edge of the squall, it would just throw us back in, and we've got pictures of our trek, and we were just like going all over the place. But eventually we just put engines at full throttle. When we got to the edge, we just thought, well, we're going to have to strain the engine. We just put it at full throttle, and somehow we got out of it. But by then, the storm had moved us to within 10 nautical miles of the coast of Brazil, and we were just so worried that if we got another one and it pushed us closer, you do not want to be getting close to the coastline of Brazil, out of control of your boat. Anyway, we managed it. We got through, and we got to the Cabedelo River entrance at about, the sun was just going down, so it must have been about 6 o'clock. And when we came in, we were flanked by squalls. We were racing because we could see a squall on either side of us, and we just thought one of those is going to catch us. And we were going into the river purely by directions that Denver had sent us, because they had come through the day before, so he had given us a lot of markers that we needed to look for. We were really worried that it was starting to get dark, but we got into the river mouth. It was still light, and then it was just a case of coming up the river. We had been warned that there's very shallow parts of the river, but Denver had said to us, just stick dead center of the river, come up. And when we got here, luckily he was here and could show us, because then we came in and there was all the bright lights of the marina, so it's quite hard to see the moorings. But Denver got in the duck and went out with a torch and led us into the mooring and handed us, like, tied us in. And it was just so good to be here and safe and start relaxing. We came up, got some nice pizzas, and sat and had some wine and pizzas for dinner.
So our first day in Brazil.
Happy to be here.
We got here. We didn't think we would, but we are here. We've had a chill day, just sat at the club doing internet for the first time. No, not restricted or limited or anything. And then this is the beautiful sunset we got. So it all feels very surreal still to be here. It was a trip and a half. I don't think I ever want to cross an ocean again. And Colbin's big idea is to own a yacht one day and do some more crossings with it. That's going to be an option. Hey Colbin, are we getting a yacht?
Yes.
No. That wasn't in the marriage agreement.
I'll write it in there.
So, hopefully a good night's sleep, some more rest, and we can go exploring a bit deeper into Cabedelo. Thank you for watching with us. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and if you have any questions, please leave it in the comments below.